Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to yet another webinar by the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium. My name is Ramatu Muhammad. I'm a family support staff for Center for Leadership in Disability. I'm also the parent coordinator for the IDEAL program. And most importantly, I'm a parent of 4 children. 2 girls, 2 boys. My oldest daughter is living with autism spectrum disorder, and I'm your host / moderator. Today's webinar is titled Stable Accounts and Special Needs Trust, and our presenter is Doug Jackson. He's the Deputy Director at Stable Accounts Office of the Ohio Treasurer of State. Doug Jackson has been dedicated to the field of developmental disabilities. For over 20 years and works with a passion to serve people with disabilities and their families through improving the support system and the support staff. Doug's experience include managing the services of a direct support agency, executive administration in Ohio's County Board of DD system, teaching human services classes at the Wright State University, and guiding a state-operated developmental center as the superintendent. Doug joined the office of the Ohio Treasurer of State to help administer Ohio's stable accounts, a financial plan for people with disabilities. Before we start the webinar, here are a few things to note. Everyone except the presenter will be muted during the presentation. While the presentation is going on, you may wish to drop any questions in the question bar below. We will be answering all questions at the end of the presentation. Just in case you cannot type your questions, use the raise your hand option and I will get to you at the end of the presentation and unmute you to verbally ask your question. That's like for those people using their phone to listen in. Thank you. So, Doug, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and happy to join everybody on this webinar. I always like being in person with an audience best, but webinars are very good to have a broad reach and able to speak to more people through this platform. So I appreciate you joining me electronically. We'll talk in the end about an opportunity that you'll have to come and see a face-to-face presentation if you'd like. I will be in Atlanta, Georgia in August, so we'll share those details in the end. But we are talking today about what is known in Georgia as a Georgia Stable Account. And so the first question you may have is, why is Doug Jackson speaking to us from Ohio? And that is because of a great partnership that Ohio's ABLE program, known as Stable Accounts, it is a national program, and the partnership that we have with 11 other partner states, including Georgia, to have the most used ABLE program in America. So I'm going to jump into several background facts before I jump into how a Georgia Stable Account works for you, and just kind of explain how we got of having what is now called Georgia Stable, why you may or may not have heard about it so far, and then lead you through the usefulness of Georgia Stable and how that can improve the lives of people with disabilities. So usually I would ask an audience to raise their hands, but I can't do that and see you raising your hand. So I'm just gonna assume that we have people from various different groups. I'm gonna assume that we have parents on the line that have an adult or a minor child with a disability. I'm going to assume that we have professionals on the line that may serve people with disabilities. I'm going to assume that we have people with disabilities on this webinar also. And so no matter what group you may be with or any other group that I didn't mention, I hope that this is a valuable webinar for you. So what I do want you to know is that the presentation that I'm giving today is being recorded. It's going to be available to you afterwards, and I really appreciate Georgia State University doing that. So thank you, Ramatu, to provide that to you as well as others who may be able to view it later. The PowerPoint presentation that we're using, and you see the first slide of it on your screen right now, with Georgia Stable and 4 individuals standing there. This presentation is actually available at georgiastable.com. So just the presentation alone, or the slides themselves, are also available there. And we'll talk about that website because of how important it is to know where to go to access Georgia Stable. So if we can go to the next slide. I want to back up just a little bit and talk about what is an ABLE account. So ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And these accounts were made possible by federal legislation that passed in 2014 and was signed by the president of that time, and allowed people with disabilities to save money. Because for the past many, many, many years, decades, people with disabilities who have received public benefits, and when I say public benefits, I'm primarily referring to the significant benefit programs like SSI and Medicaid, but I truly mean any public benefit, always had a resource limitation. When I say resource limitation, what I mean is you couldn't save money beyond $2,000 and keep your benefits. At one time, that limit was only $1,500. It did go up over time to be $2,000 across both Social Security and Medicaid. But I'm just going to use the amount 2,000 as the limit that people are very familiar with, that if they exceed $2,000, they would lose their public benefits. So part of my background as an introduction was explaining the time that I've spent helping people with disabilities in residential services. And so I actually entered into that field over 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, as I was providing direct services, part of my job was to take people that I served into the community to spend money. And I didn't understand the system at the time, but I knew that that action just didn't make sense. We were spending money really for the only purpose of keeping their public benefits. In this case, it was the Medicaid that was very important because I was a Medicaid service provider. And if the individual lost their Medicaid, they lost the services that provided the staffing and the supports that they needed to live their day-to-day lives. So we would go out and we would spend money. That term would be known as spend down. So wasting money simply to keep benefits. You may be familiar with that. That should not be occurring for somebody to receive the supports that they need. Other ways of safeguarding, and I use that in quotes, so quote unquote safeguarding your money would be to waste, or besides wasting it, spending it now, would be to hide it. So maybe put it under your bed mattress or in the freezer, hide it in your own home, or to inappropriately place it in somebody else's account. So think of maybe the child's money going into mom and dad's account so that it didn't show up on the child's account statement and have them be over-resourced. So I know that all of those ways of keeping resources below $2,000 have been used. You may be smiling right now saying, yep, I've done that just to keep my child's benefits, or as a case manager to keep somebody on that you're serving to keep their benefits at the appropriate level. But back in 2014, advocacy finally won over legislation, and legislation was passed to allow accounts to be opened where money in the account does not count towards that resource limit. And those accounts are called ABLE accounts. So if we go to the next slide. So an ABLE account, it can be described like this. We use other existing financial tools to describe the ABLE account. It's kind of like a 529 college savings account in that you can put money in it, you can invest it, and you can grow it for the future. So in a college savings account, it would be for a specific expense. It would be for that higher education. An ABLE account is not just for education, it's for many more things, but it takes the concept of the college savings account and saving for the future and adds it with a checking account, which means that it is transactional. You can start drawing money back out of your ABLE account as soon as that money is put in. And it also has the functionality of a special needs trust. So a special needs trust is a protected resource that doesn't count towards that asset or resource limit, but there are significant differences between a special needs trust and an ABLE account. We just like to say that it has the functionality of having the protection that it's not counted as a resource. So looking at the next slide, what is Georgia Stable then? So as I said in the beginning, Georgia did a fantastic thing for the residents of the state of Georgia in that they partnered with an existing ABLE program, which was Ohio's program known as Stable Account. That means that Georgia was not burdened with creating a new ABLE account program. So they saved taxpayer dollars to not recreate something that already existed. Instead, they joined with Ohio in a free partnership. So there's no fee to the state of Georgia to participate with Ohio's plan. And we created an in-state ABLE plan known as Georgia Stable. So it has all of the same features as what the Ohio Stable account has. It has the same features as the other partner states, but it's offered to Georgia residents and administered in-state by agencies at the state level. So it is administered or overseen by the Ohio Treasurer's Office. The Georgia plan launched in June of 2017, and it is still part of the largest ABLE program under that stable partnership. So we have more people participating in Stable Account than any other ABLE program that exists in America. And we're going to talk a lot about why that is and the features that make Georgia Stable such a popular program. We go to the next slide. The benefits then are this. It dramatically increases the ability of a person on public benefits to save. So before an ABLE account, you couldn't save over $2,000, or if you did, you'd risk losing all the health care and other benefits that you need. But now with Georgia Stable, you can save well over the $2,000. That is a life-changing difference. If you think about a person with a disability's life, always trying to maintain their living with never being able to save over $2,000, that was very limiting to their ability to save for any great expense, whether that was something that was just an enjoyable purchase like a vacation, or whether it was something that was more necessary like a vehicle or a modification to a vehicle or purchasing a home, or in some cases even renting a place. If you're paying for first month's rent, last month's rent, and deposit, it could quickly add up, and the expenses of starting life in your own rental place could be over $2,000. So now a person with a disability can have much higher limits of savings and much more equality to people without disabilities and how they can manage their funds. The next slide, we'll talk about who owns stable accounts first. So the Georgia Stable Account is owned by the person with a disability. So that is significantly different than a trust. A trust is for the benefit of the person with a disability, but not owned by the person with a disability. So a trust is managed by a trustee. A Georgia Stable Account is owned by the person with a disability. Now, others can manage the account for the person with a disability if the need is there, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But even if it's managed by somebody else, the money in the account is still owned by the person with a disability. So that actually allows financial independence. Part of my career was spent as a case manager. And as a case manager, I got the opportunity to help coordinate all the areas of a person's life. And those areas would include things like where they live, their medical and health conditions, what they did for work. A question that I never asked in case management was, how are your investments doing? Because a person can now have over $2,000, and because investments are built into Georgia Stable, they now have the opportunity to actually grow their money, again, like a person without a disability who could invest their funds and see the growth and still keep a normal life. Then you look at the tax benefits of it. There can be tax benefits. Those tax benefits are unique to each state, but the tax benefits regardless of state, at a federal level, even include things like the Savers tax credit, that if a person is working, they could benefit from putting money into this and reducing their taxable amount at a federal level. So there are tax benefits. I like to say that we created a good problem, and that because there's tax benefits and there's investments, perhaps there's a need for professional oversight. Personally, my family, we use the services of a financial planner, and we pay for those services. And we do that because, honestly, that's not my skill set. And so I have the need for a professional to provide guidance to us. Now a person with a disability, if they have questions about their investments, or if they're having their taxes prepared instead of doing it themselves, those professionals should know how to treat ABLE accounts and handle those accordingly. So on the next slide, who is eligible for a Georgia Stable account? This is important to understand. If you're on this call, you're probably on it because of that connection to the community of people with disabilities, one of the groups that I had mentioned at the very beginning. But here is what makes an individual person eligible for the Georgia Stable account, and that is that their disability occurred prior to the age of 26. So when you're talking about lifelong disabilities, conditions that you are born with, those are obviously conditions that start before the age of 26. Really, this is important for other conditions that may occur later in life. So I'd like to use traumatic brain injury as a great example of that. Traumatic brain injury, the onset of that would occur at the time that the accident happened that caused the traumatic brain injury. I had the unfortunate experience of somebody contacting our office to request some clarification on if they were eligible or not. It was an individual that had a traumatic brain injury and paraplegia due to a vehicle accident. That vehicle accident happened 2 weeks after his 26th birthday. Unfortunately, that person was not eligible for the Stable account. I say unfortunately, knowing that there is also an advocacy effort to increase that age. So there is a bill currently on Capitol Hill that would increase that age. We support that and the efforts to get that passed, but right now that age is at 26. If the person has a disability that occurred prior to the age of 26, any one of these three following conditions would qualify the person for the Stable account. The first was that the individual is eligible to receive SSI or SSDI. That does not mean that they have to be receiving it, just that they're eligible to receive it. Or that the person has any condition listed on Social Security Administration's list of compassionate allowances conditions. So don't just think about developmental disabilities. Think about disabilities in a much broader range. Think about, as I already mentioned, traumatic brain injury. Think about mental health conditions. Think about other medical conditions that would make that person disabled, like cancers and other things that would be listed on the list of compassionate allowances conditions. Or the third way is the most broad way, called self-certification. And on the next slide, it defines self-certification as a medical professional that has diagnosed the individual with a marked and severe functional limitation. And that's put in quotes there because if those words are specifically used, it's very clear. Now, sometimes doctors like to use other language, but we would certainly know that this language that's used would make an individual eligible for a Stable account. So marked and severe functional limitation. That is the same definition Social Security uses for disability. We look at it from the federal guidelines that make a person eligible, and that's why we quoted that specific language there, marked and severe functional limitation. Also, the condition has to have lasted or is expected to last for at least a year, so we're not talking about short-term disabilities. And our system is designed, if you look at point number 3, that a written diagnosis needed to be submitted. You only indicate that you have it on record and that you could submit it if it was needed later to prove your eligibility. So when we designed Stable account, what we did is worked with people with disabilities, family members, and professionals, and we said, what is the best way to reduce barriers to using this program? And one of the continuous messages that we received was, other government programs are too laborious in applying for the benefit, typically requiring making an appointment, going into an office, actually leaving your home and needing to go someplace, sitting in a waiting room, only to meet with somebody and be told that you don't have all the information that's required. So you have to leave, make another appointment, follow back up, go through the whole cycle again, and then wait to see if your eligibility has been determined. We did not want a model after that. We wanted to create something that was easy to use. So our enrollment process, and we're going to talk more about that, is it's online, and we do not require a written diagnosis to be submitted. We actually believe an individual to be telling the truth through the enrollment process, and at the end of the enrollment process, you check mark a box that says, indeed, I am telling the truth, that this disability does exist, and that I've got the appropriate documentation if needed. So we are happy to reduce that barrier to enrollment. On the next slide, okay, I'm still seeing self-certification, but Ramatu she's changing that up. Ramatu, my screen went blank. I'm not sure if your screen is showing next slide.
I don't know what happened. It just, those update pop-ups. So I have to load the presentation again. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I can see Ramat because I have it up on my computer as well. So I'm going to keep talking while you bring that screen up.
Yes, please.
So then on the next slide that you'll see in just a moment, it talks about the enrollment process. So again, enrollment is done online. And the reason for that is we wanted people to have access to any records that they may need, which are typically kept in the home. We didn't want people to have to leave their home because sometimes, especially with a disability, that may be a challenge to do. We wanted them to be able to do it whenever it was convenient to do it. So it is done online, and it's free to enroll into the program. Now we're going to talk about some small account fees. Thank you for bringing that back up in the future. But right now, the enrollment, it's needed for you to know that enrollment is free. It's quick and it's easy, approximately 20 minutes. We gain feedback from people who have enrolled from all over the country. We're serving people in all 50 states. Georgia being a partner state, obviously we're serving people in Georgia. I have a great story that actually came from Georgia. One time when I was there speaking with self-advocates, somebody raised their hand and said that they did this enrollment process in a matter of a few minutes. And when I asked how she did it, she said because she did it on her smartphone with the autofill feature, all she had to do was click fill in, and it filled in most of the fields for her, only with a few remaining fields for her to actually enter in information. So it is a very easy enrollment process. There's a $50 minimum opening deposit. That just creates a balance in the account. That is not a fee, but just like a checking or a savings account, if you have an account, you need a balance in the account. So you can begin using that $50 after the account is opened. And the account can be opened by the individual with a disability. And about 1/3 of our accounts are open that way. So if the person with a disability has the capacity to manage their own finances, they can do that. Or it can be opened and managed by an authorized legal representative. Now that definition is defined in the federal ABLE legislation, and it is a parent, a guardian, or a power of attorney. So parent, guardian, or power of attorney can open an account for an individual with a disability. There is actually a power of attorney form on the Georgia Stable website. It's got all of the legal language necessary to allow a designated person to oversee the Georgia Stable account for the individual, and it requires the signature of the person who's becoming the POA. And then that form is simply kept on file by the power of attorney, by the person who's going to oversee it. So I say power of attorney because it's important to know that a representative payee, or somebody who has been designated by Social Security to manage the funds of the individual, is not listed as an authorized legal representative. However, a representative payee can oversee a Georgia Stable account by simply having the POA form completed. So it would be as a POA that they would be overseeing that account, not as a representative payee, but even representative payees can oversee these accounts under that POA authorization. On the next slide, there are some limits to the account. Now, when I say limit, I always use that word very cautiously. I don't even like saying the word limit because I think that it is misleading. These limits are extremely high, and when you think about the $2,000 limit that existed prior to ABLE accounts, you see why I'm so cautious in using the word limit. The lifetime balance limit of Georgia Stable is $468,000 that the individual could have, and that is not counted as a resource for public benefits. So that is an amazingly high balance. Of course, it is going to take many years to attain that balance because there are two other numbers that you need to know. If the individual is not employed, there's a $15,000 contribution limit from all sources per calendar year. So all sources means that if mom and dad are putting in, maybe the person with a disability is putting in, maybe grandparents are putting in, all of those contributions are going towards that $15,000. But our system is designed to automatically reject anything that would exceed that $15,000. So we built in a protection so that you don't have to be concerned about violating that rule. Now, if the person is employed, the next president, after ABLE legislation was put into place, did an improvement to ABLE legislation and signed into effect what is called Able to Work. Able to Work is an incentive that allows a person with an ABLE account to put in additional money up to the federal poverty line so that their total contributions per year could reach up to $27,140. That is a significant amount of savings every year that is not counted as a resource and keeps the ability to maintain those public benefits. On the next slide, it then discusses how do you get your money into the account. Because you've created it online, you didn't go to a place, you didn't go to a bank or another government office. Now, how do you get the money from your account or from your home into this Georgia Stable account? And there's two different ways of doing that. The first is through an electronic funds transfer. That's a big fancy term for like online banking. So you're shifting funds online from one account to another. So if it's mom and dad's account and they want to put money into the Georgia Stable account, mom and dad could use their checking and savings account to transfer money from that personal account into the Georgia Stable account. If it's the individual with a disability and they have their own personal checking or savings account, they could draw funds out of that personal account and into their Georgia Stable account. As soon as it is in the Georgia Stable account, it is not counted as a resource. Another way to get money into the Georgia Stable account is to write a check and mail it in. And if you choose that contribution method, it'll come up on your computer screen with the address that you mail it to. And in the check memo line, you would be putting the beneficiary's name and account number so that it can be deposited into the appropriate account. And those instructions are all provided at the time that you choose to submit a check. There is another way to get money into the Georgia Stable account, and this is a pretty awesome way because if you think about the life of a person with a disability and the limitations that have been there, one of the things that we've oftentimes limited is the ability to give money as a gift. So if you think about Christmas or birthday or high school graduation, high school graduation is a great example because the #1 gift at high school graduation is a financial gift. But for a person with a disability, they've always told their friends and family, don't give a financial gift because if I receive that, I have to report that as an asset. It's going to be in my checking or be in my savings account. It's going to possibly put me over the $2,000 limit. And so I'd prefer to just not receive it. And maybe you can give me a gift card or a tangible item or something other than a financial gift. But now, because Georgia Stable allows anybody to contribute into the account, we've built in the same functionality as a system you may be familiar with called GoFundMe. GoFundMe is an online, it's called crowdfunding platform. So other people can click on a link and provide money towards a person or a cause. We've built that into the Stable account. The person can log into their Stable account, send out an email. You know, in the example of a birthday, you could say, Johnny's birthday is coming up. If you're considering giving Johnny a financial birthday gift, click here. It provides then a live link that allows a person to then make an electronic funds transfer from their own account into the individual with a disabilities Georgia Stable account. So that is a great way for a person with a disability to receive money from others that want to support them or want to give to them. Other great examples other than holidays would be for specific needs that a person with a disability may be trying to attain. So we have many stories similar to this one. An individual needed hearing aids and Medicare was going to pay for a portion of them, except he still had a $4,000 out-of-pocket expense for his hearing aid. Now, without a Stable account, he would have never had the ability to even save that $4,000. With the Stable account, he could save it, and he could also have other people help him reach that $4,000 goal. So he sent out an email to his friends and family and said, I'm buying these hearing aids. They're going to cost $4,000. If you would like to help me reach my goal of paying for these hearing aids, click here. In under a month, he had enough support from friends and family that he had raised over $4,000 and was able to buy his hearing aids because people gave to the need to support him. So it was a pretty awesome way for him to protect that money, use it from his Stable account to pay for his hearing aids. All of the record keeping of that gifting system is kept within the Stable account. It notifies you who's given money. It even allows you to send a thank you note back right from your Georgia Stable account. Now, you still have the option of handwriting a thank you, putting it in the mail to that person who gave, but we want to keep up with technology, and so that ability to write a thank you note right from the Georgia Stable account is built into it. On the next slide, you're going to see investment options. So there's 3 different models that are on these slides, and these are just examples. These are not preset models. You can use whatever you want. But when I say investment options, again, I go back to this may be the first time that a person with a disability has ever even considered investing. Now, they do not have to invest. This can be used just like a savings account and an FDIC insured option called Bank Safe. So it's the last option of 5 options listed in each one of those columns. The Bank Safe is just like a savings account. It is not going to grow like an investment account, but it's also not going to lose like an investment account may lose. Because investment accounts are a part of the stock market, so they do go up and down. Now, we've been in existence for over 3 years in Ohio's program. Georgia's now been over 2 years as a partner. And we just received our 3-year look back of all the investments. And that look back over time since the beginning has tremendous rates of return on it, as high as 14% in the options that are available. Because there's 4 different investment options, and they are Vanguard mutual funds. So Vanguard is very recognizable, very well known. They're very cost-effective investment options, and that's why we chose Vanguard. But you have 4 different options because the type of investing ranges from very conservative, which is mostly bonds with some stocks, up to very aggressive, which is much more stocks and less bonds. But 4 options to choose from. And the examples that are in these 3 columns show, first on the left-hand column, that the person wanted to put all of their money into the FDIC insured account, the Bank Safe account, and just earn the smaller amount of interest that is typical to a savings account. Now that interest has still been very good. I think it was 0.9% over a 3-year period. For a savings account, that's been a good track record. So we're very happy with the returns on that. But it's not nearly what could be gained in other investments. So you look at the middle model, and that person decided to equally spread out their money between all 5 options, the 4 investment and the bank safe option. And then the right-hand column is another example where the person just decided for themselves where they wanted to vary their percentages. It all still equals 100% spread out amongst those 5 options. But each person can choose what they want. The default option is the bank safe option. So what we know is we had some people very concerned when they got to investment choices, and they froze at that point. They didn't want to move forward. So we made it even easier. We said, if you don't know what you want to do, then the bank safe option is the right option to start with. So by default, it would go into the bank safe option. It can be changed. It can be changed twice a year into other investment options, as well as future contributions can be changed at any point. So it's very flexible on how you would like to invest it. Looking at the next slide. So spending from your account. This is an important slide because some people are going to say, oh, well, this is the catch to it. I can only spend it on certain things. But it's important to know that what is called a qualified disability expense includes almost everything in a person's life. Because a qualified disability expense has to first relate to the person with the disability. So this is not to be money that's saved in a stable account and then given to somebody else. That would negate the purpose of the legislation that was created, that this is for people with disabilities. So the account money must be spent on the person with a disability. And it has to help maintain or improve the health, independence, or quality of life. So health, independence, and quality of life, that is a very broad definition. The categories that are underneath it are categories that are in the federal legislation. Those are examples. Those are not exclusive. So think about things like housing and rent, basic living expenses, including food, transportation, education, technology, financial fees, like paying a financial planner, health and wellness, so joining a gym or paying medical bills, legal fees. So again, I'm going to say special needs trust. You could actually pay for the establishment of a special needs trust with funds that have been saved in a stable account. So if both tools are needed, you can make those payments through the stable account. And then it says, and many more. And that's because there is no exhaustive list that says every one of these things on this list is a qualified disability. And the reason that is because number one, you could never come up with everything that can be purchased. And number two, each person with a disability's needs are different. As an example of that, I had one father ask me, can I buy music CDs for my son with his stable account? And being the good steward that I am, I didn't give him an answer. I didn't say yes or no. And he wasn't frustrated by that because what I asked him instead was, how would you justify that? And so the light bulb went off in his head and he thought, he's talking about how does my son benefit from music CDs? He knew the answer to that. He said, my son has autism and his provider takes him into the community to purchase his music. So now we have community inclusion. His son talks about his music to everybody that he interacts with. So he's got that, social engagement from the conversations that he has about it. And the music calms him. So all purposes that would justify music CDs as an expense. Now you might say, well, who am I justifying it to? Well, the account would only be audited because it's a tax-advantaged account. It would be audited if the IRS was auditing the person's IRS claims. So if the person is paying taxes and the IRS decides to audit this account, the stable account could be audited at that time. Now your chance of being audited because of a stable account is no greater because you have it than if you did not have the stable account, but it would be an IRS audit, at which time our system provides all of the transactional records, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So you don't have to save shoeboxes filled with receipts or file folders filled with receipts. Our system would be able to provide all of the documentation that would be needed. But qualified disability expense relates to the person with the disability and helps to maintain or improve the health, independence, or quality of life. So on the next slide, a non-qualified expenditure would mean that it could be counted as a resource. So the amount that you spent on something not qualified would go towards that $2,000 resource limit during the month that it was spent. And it could incur other tax penalties, meaning that you would pay taxes because it's a tax-preferred account. You're not paying taxes on any of the growth. So it's very important to know because that's a great advantage of the account. You can invest it and grow it and not pay taxes on it. But if you're using it inappropriately, you're going to be taxed with a penalty on the amount that you've spent and the proportional amount of that tax growth or investment growth. So those are important things to understand. So spending from the account. Spending from the account is great to understand because it's very easy to do. And so again, we want to ease people's mind as to how does this function in my life? How easy does it make it? Because we don't want to have a program that makes your life more challenging. We want it to fit your everyday life and how you manage your funds. So spending from the account can happen 3 different ways. The first way is that you can take money out of your Georgia Stable account. You can put it back into your regular spending account, your checking account, your savings account. It'll show a record from your Georgia Stable account and the transfer to that personal account. Because of my background and the financial auditing that I had to always be prepared for the people that I serve, I'll be honest, I don't like that method because the record keeping stops with the transaction to this personal checking or savings. It doesn't show what it was actually spent on. So you can do that, but you're going to have to be better at record keeping. The next 2 methods actually keep the record showing what was purchased, the amount, the date, the place it was purchased. All of those records are maintained for you. So the next way is called third party. Third party means you log on to your stable account, you tell us a payment needs to be made, and we make it for you. So think about rent. If you're paying your landlord, you log on to your stable account, you tell us your landlord's name, the address to send that payment to, and we mail the landlord a check. We only say that you need to do that with enough time to allow the check to be written and mailed. So if your rent is due tomorrow, don't log on today and ask us to pay it. It's not going to be there on time. So we tell people to leave 7 to 10 days between your request and the time that check would arrive where you're asking us to send it to. The third way is our most popular way, and it's really the easiest way to spend money, and that is a card called the stable card. So you can transfer money from your stable account onto your stable card. Going to the next slide, you'll see a picture of the stable card. It looks like a normal credit card with the stable account logo on it. You see where it says your name. Your name is important because some people with disabilities have never had their own credit or debit card. This is very empowering. We find it a great joy to be a part of people's lives when they're getting the first card that they've ever had, and it has the stable account logo on it. Going to the next slide, it looks at the benefits of the stable card. So again, we worked with all types of family and independent living situations to see what would best suit the spending mechanism for people with disabilities. The loadable debit card works for people managing their own account. It works for a professional managing an account like a residential services provider. It works for a parent managing an account, because the loadable debit card, the word loadable is very important. It comes with a $0 balance on it. It's worth nothing. You log into the account, you transfer money from the stable account onto the card, and the card is only worth that much money. So think about scenarios like a child that you want to give access to some of the funds, but not the entire stable account. So the child has their own debit card, you log in as a parent, and you place some money onto that debit card, and the debit card's only worth that amount. We'll use $50 as an example. The child can take that card out, They can't overdraft from that card. They can't get access to cash. They can't put it into an ATM machine and withdraw cash. They can't make a purchase and then the purchase asks them if they want cash back on top of the amount of the purchase. That won't happen. It can send, this is an option, text alerts every time the card is spent. So whether you're managing the account yourself or it's a parent managing the account, you would know when that card is being spent, how much is being spent from it. So that's a great oversight method. It tracks all of the expenses online. It allows you to put notes into each one of those transactions. So if you want to put further notes as to why you purchased something, you could do that. But this card solves the problem of spending in every situation that we've come across. So you can put large amounts of money on it. You can put small amounts of money on it. You can put on it whatever frequency you need to put it on there. Whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, you could put more money on, whatever frequency, and then go out and use that card any place Visa is accepted. So obviously Visa is accepted at most places, and you're able to spend it just like you're using any other credit or debit card. Okay, on the next slide, this gets a little bit into technical, what I call in the technical weeds. Social Security. So I don't work for Social Security, therefore I've given myself permission to poke at them a little bit. Came up with a couple extra rules. Now I'm not going to argue the validity of these rules, but they had to add a couple extra things that go above and beyond the regular application of the federal legislation. And these things are this. If the Georgia Stable account reaches the amount of $100,000, supplemental security income, or SSI, is suspended. Now, why is SSI suspended at that balance? Because SSI is a benefit that supplements a person's food and housing. The Social Security has determined that if you have $100,000 in your account, in your name, you no longer need supplemental public benefits to support food and housing for you. So your benefit, your SSI benefits, just SSI, that's all that we're talking about. Medicaid is not included in this, nor any other public benefits. Just SSI would be suspended as long as that account remains above $100,000. If you spend back down, your SSI benefits should be reinstated. If you hold on to the money from one calendar month to the next and then spend it on housing, it counts as a resource. This is the one I like to poke at the most because this one doesn't make sense to me. But all we say is that if you take it out of your account for rent, pay it the same month you take it out. Now, if you're asking for a third-party payment to be made, it's already done for you. If you ask for it today, it's considered spent today, whether the landlord receives it today or not. So you're okay there. Point number 3 is a very important point, that the individual's own wages still count as income. So Georgia Stable accounts are a resource protection. So they're an asset protection. You're saving money, you're keeping it. You want to go over that $2,000 resource limit. This allows you to do it. What it does not do is reduce what is countable income. So how much you make if you are working is still considered an earned wage. So that's important to know. Now, a common misconception is that if you work and you earn more, then it's not worth it because your benefits are going to go down. The misconception is because if you work more and you earn more, chances are you're coming home with more, even with reduced benefits. So we always encourage people to have their benefits analyzed by somebody who can do those comparisons and tell you what more money earned is going to do to your public benefits like SSI, but earned wages still count as earned wages. Now, on the next slide, it talks about if the account holder passes away. So if the account holder of a Georgia Stable account has money in the account and they pass away, then Medicaid recovery, Medicaid clawback, there's different terms for it, exists and can look to this account to say, we want some money back that we spent on you in Medicaid services out of your Stable account. That's if you meet the criteria for Medicaid recovery. So this is not ABLE rules. This is Medicaid estate recovery rules. It just applies to an ABLE account because an ABLE account is money that the person has when they pass away. So it does not protect from that. Some families have said, well, I want to leave money to my son or to my daughter, what we would call generational wealth. I want to leave them with money. But if my son or daughter passes away, I don't want that going to Medicaid. I want that going to my other child or to some other place. What we would suggest is looking at a special needs trust, because third-party money coming from another source other than the person with a disability, can be protected from Medicaid recovery in a third-party trust. First-party money, the money earned or owned by the person with a disability, there is no place to put it that's protected from Medicaid recovery. So a first-party trust does not protect it. A stable account does not protect it. But here are some limitations on the next slide to Medicaid being able to call back any of that money. First, the person can pay for any outstanding qualified disability expenses. When I say the person, I would say the estate executor. So the person passes away, somebody takes over, closing everything out for that person. They can pay for all remaining qualified disability expenses, including funeral and burial. So I've had other families say, my son, my daughter with a disability, they're going to have the best funeral and burial because Medicaid's not going to get any money back. That's personal prerogative on that. It can be spent on funeral and burial. Those are qualified expenses. That is okay. If you're paying for Medicaid services, so you're paying a premium and like Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities, what you've paid into Medicaid is first taken out, or it reduces the amount that Medicaid can recover from you. So that's another good protection from having your stable or money in the stable account. But Medicaid, in some cases, is still going to be able to look to this account. If there's still a balance in the account after Medicaid looks at this account and tries to recover funds, or if there is no Medicaid recovery and there's money in this account, then the remaining balance goes to the person's estate and is managed either according to a will or according to the probate process. So those are two very normal processes for handling an estate after a person is gone. Okay, so looking at the next slide, and we are coming close to the end of this presentation. The next slide talks about the account costs. There are account costs. They're very small. These account costs are much smaller than other tools that protect, like a special needs trust. Special needs trusts, again, have benefits to it, but this is a more cost-effective benefit. So $3.50 per month is what is charged. That is just simply to maintain the program. We've actually reduced that once because of our what we call economy of scale. So the more people that participate, the more we can share that cost. We've brought down the cost from $5 a month down to $3.50. We hope to continue to do that in the future. We are not a for-profit company. We're a state agency administering a national program. So we've got very competitive fees with all other ABLE accounts that are out there, kind of right in the middle of those fees. We also have the very lowest asset-based fees. So those are investment fees. Anytime you're investing funds, you're going to pay some sort of an investment fee. Ours is between 0.19 and 0.33%. So that is very low. If you know about investments, I've only learned about them through this role with stable account. What I've come to understand is that is a very low investment fee. And that's something that pays for the Vanguard investments. So the last content slide that we have is stable accounts and special needs trusts. So oftentimes people ask, which one do I need? And my answer to that is yes. And I say that with some humor because every person's goals, their life situation is different. And so you may need just a stable account, you may need just a special needs trust, or likely you're going to need both, but it does depend what you're trying to do. So a stable account can receive distributions from a special needs trust. That is very important to understand because special needs trust could hold third-party money where Medicaid can't recover from it. So mom and dad leave a life insurance policy to a special needs trust for their son or daughter. You know, the life insurance policy might be very large, exceeding the stable account annual contribution limit, so you would have to put it into another protected resource like a trust. We'll just use the example of $100,000 left for the child with a disability. It goes into a special needs trust, but you want the child with a disability to have access to it, and you want it to be spent on the broadest amount of things that it can be spent on. That's why making a distribution from a special needs trust into a stable account makes so much sense. So you can make that transfer. A special needs trust cannot pay for food and housing because it would affect the individual's public benefits, so that payment would not be made out of a special needs trust. But a stable account can pay for food and housing. So if you make that distribution from the special needs trust into the stable account, you can now use funds from the special needs trust through the stable account spending vehicle to pay for food and housing. So it broadens the usefulness of a special needs trust. What I would say is, if you're working with an attorney who is working on a special needs trust or has already drafted a trust, have a conversation with that attorney about the Georgia Stable account. If they're unaware of it, then consider seeking an attorney who is aware of the Georgia Stable, or let that attorney know that they can contact our office, and we would be happy to educate them on it and to help them make the best use of both tools together. So again, special needs trusts are great tools, stable accounts are great tools, and using them together is likely going to be the best way that you can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Going to the next slide. We are here to help. We have a 1-800 number. If you've experienced calling another government office and you've been put on hold or had to leave voicemails, or that is not the experience you're going to have for us. And I'm always happy to speak boldly about our quality of customer service, because I know that people who call it receive great customer service. The first thing they receive is that somebody picks up the phone and says hello. I know that's unique to government programs, but we're committed to answering the phone and providing answers immediately. So we have our team of staff answering thousands of calls a month, and they're prepared to answer the next call that comes in between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If the customer service can't answer the question, it's gotten to be a very technical question. Oftentimes, myself or one of our team will take that call. It'll be escalated to us, and you might hear from me if there's a tough question. Happy to jump in and answer those questions. We also have an email address, team@stableaccount.com, and then the website, which is very important to know, is that georgiastable.com. So you can enroll from that website. You can find all of our resources there, including the PowerPoint we just went through, the power of attorney form that I referenced, other fact sheets, brochures, frequently asked questions. The website is a great resource, so georgiastable.com. And then just the last slide is a picture slide that's there. We've helped now over 12,000 families. That's how many people we're serving. We're on our way to 13,000. Again, I've referenced that we're the largest ABLE program, and Georgia is a part of what has made this large nationwide. We say that because we're serving people in all 50 states. People from other states that have their own different ABLE program in their state are still choosing the stable account program because of all of the benefits that it offers. So we're happy to provide that to Georgia residents. We are going to take questions and answers. I'm happy to do that and turn that back over to hopefully facilitate some of those questions that have been coming in. But I do want to mention one more thing. Ramacha, I'm not sure if you can pull it up on the screen now, but I am going to be in Georgia on August 29th. And I'm going to be there doing 2 large public presentations, so they're open to anybody who would like to attend. One is on August 29th at 2 p.m., and I would call that one focused for professionals serving people with disabilities. The other is in the evening on August 29th at 7 p.m. Both of these flyers or these invitations are going to be sent out by Ramato after the presentation ends today. So you will have access to these as to where they are located at and the time, so that you can come to this or share the invitation with somebody else that you would like to know about stable accounts. we're going to be there in person and sharing the same information we shared today, but with a much more interactive style, being in front of you in person. So happy that we are partnered with Georgia. I know I'm calling you from Ohio, but we feel very close to the Georgia plan and the effort that's being done there to bring Georgia Stable to those who can benefit from it. So Ramatu, is there a way for you to share the questions that have risen? All right.
I don't know if you can see it, but I can see them and I can read them. In the question bar, there's a place for questions. I think you can pull it up on your screen. We've already reached like the end of it, so we're going to quickly wrap it up as briefly as we can, answer the questions so that
sure.
We can still follow up with emails. You can email me, audience. You have my email is rmohammed14@gsu.edu. But we'll go ahead and answer questions, and then if you have need more clarity, please reach out to me and we would reply your email together with Doug. So the first question says, my brother is in a home that our family owns. The home is run by an agency. My brother's check is sent to the agency. I am my brother's guardian. Will I have to take over his money in order to open a stable account, or can I work with the agency to open an account? But I think she had another one after that where she said, I believe you just answered my question. So I think we could just skip that and move to the next question, which says, is the ABLE account FDIC insured even if you don't use the bank option?
Yeah, the bank safe option. The answer to that is that the other options, the 4 Vanguard mutual funds, are not FDIC insured because investment funds are not FDIC insured funds. So FDIC insured means that you cannot lose value of that account. Being in an investment fund, the account value could go up, which it has done over the last 3 years, but it can also take downturns anytime within that or in the future. So we know that long-term investment provides the best return because it rides the market over a longer period, but you could see rises and falls in the account value using investments.
Okay. Then the next question the same person has is, if the account owner passes away, is there a beneficiary for the balance of the funds? I think you must have answered
so
that.
I think I answered that in the Medicaid recovery, but if there's a remaining balance, that's going to be handled either by a will that the person would have made, or in the absence of a will through probate court and putting an executor of the estate over the remaining funds.
Okay. What are the tax implications, if any, on monies deposited that are not W-2 income?
So different states handle it different ways. Georgia does not have an in-state tax deduction. I'm nearly sure, Ramatu, I'll have to follow up with you on that,
Okay.
on contributions made to it.
Okay.
So it would just be you're not paying taxes on the interest growth. So that's a significant savings, but that also means that you don't have to file any taxes for that growth. The only other tax advantage currently is that savers tax credit. So if the individual is working, they could actually claim their own contributions as going towards that savers tax credit.
Then another person has a question that goes, can you talk about moving money from a 529 account to stable account? Is there any time?
That is a great question. Yes. Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah.
The 529 account can be rolled over. We have a form on the georgiastable.com website on the instructions to do so. So you'd be asking for a distribution from the 529 administrator to release those funds and send those to us. So those instructions are there, but that is an allowable transfer up to the annual contribution limit. So if your college savings account is greater than $15,000, it might take more than one transfer over more than 1 year in order to transfer the full balance of the college savings account into the stable account.
So the same person said, is there any time frame as to when that has to be done? Then she now added, we have a 529 account that we pay less fees on?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's smart financial planning with the way that question is asked. There is no timing necessary. Typically what happens is, you know, a 529 account may continue to exist until you're certain that the person has either finished college or does not plan to go on to further education. And then at that point, you may decide to roll it over, or you could keep it there as long as you would like to. You're just limited on what you can spend it on when it's in that college savings account in a much more limiting way than if it was in the ABLE account, which is free to spend on nearly everything. So when you're ready to use it, I would say is the best time to move it over.
Okay, that's the end of the questions. So at the end, I would just like to say thank you very much, Doug, for your time and very informative presentation. Thank you, audience, for being here. I'm going to send a follow-up email that has a link to the PowerPoint and the live recording of this webinar in case you want to go back and look at it or listen to it is going to be available on the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education website under the tab that says resources. You tap webinar, then when you're on webinar, just scroll over it. Don't tap, it will show you the option that says the GAPSEC 2019 parent webinar. Then you move your mouse to it and then you can click. But if you go ahead and click on webinar early, it will take you to another webinar. So just hover around it and it will pop up the 2019 GAPSEC webinar series. And then you can go ahead and click it and you see all previous presentations that we've had, webinars for this is the fourth one, so we've had 3 already. Everything is there, the PowerPoints are there, and then the recording takes a little while for some edits before we put it in. So give and take 2 weeks max or minimum of a week, it should be up there. Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you everyone for being part of this presentation.